Iran's Defense Minister Hossein Dehghan says Wahhabi-Takfiri terrorists are using U.S.-made weapons to commit crimes around the world on a daily basis. Dehghan says Syria and Iraq have in particular fallen victim to the use of U.S.-made weapons. He added the Yemeni nation, which has been bearing the brunt of the U.S.-backed Saudi-led aggression, has managed to stand against the coalition and its allies. The Iranian defense minister says the Yemenis will continue with their resistance as it has prevented their enemies from achieving their evil goals. His comments follow the remarks of U.S. Defense Secretary James Mattis, who has said the Houthis' firing of Iranian-supplied missiles into Saudi Arabia needs to stop. Mattis made the remarks during a visit to Saudi Arabia, which was aimed at strengthening the alliance between Washington and Riyadh. To discuss that, we're now joined by Mr. E. Michael Jones, who is the editor of Culture Wars online magazine, and he's joining us live now via Skype from South Bend, Indiana. Mr. Jones, it's undeniable, isn't it, that U.S. weapons are being used to commit crimes around the world?
I don't understand what the point of this news story is. Are they trying to say that there's a war in the Middle East? We all know there's a war in the Middle East. There are two sides in this war, and the United States, Israel, and Saudi Arabia are on one side, and Iran and Hezbollah and Syria and Russia are on the other side. So what's the news here? I don't get it. I don't get it.
And Mr. Jones, speaking about Yemen specifically, because, we're talking about the entire force of the Saudi military, the Saudi arms, bought, of course, from the U.S. against Yemeni Houthi fighters. How are they being able to stand up to all those weapons and ammunition?
Well, the point here is that do the Yemenis have a right to defend themselves against the Saudis? The answer is yes, of course they do. So why is that bad? Why is that terrorism? Why? It's because Mattis, who was probably one of Trump's worst appointments, doesn't like the other side in the war that he's waging. Well, I understand that, but this is not news, okay? I think the news, the issue here is the Trump administration going to prosecute the war that Mattis and the oligarchs and the deep state want him to prosecute in Syria? Or, as some of his supporters are now saying, was that attack in Syria a surgical strike just to get the news media off his back, to get the deep state off his back, and that the real issue is now he's going to prevent what Mattis wants, which is basically sending 150,000 American troops into Syria? I think that's the big issue. Obviously, there's a war going on between the Saudis and the Yemenis. Obviously, the Yemenis have a right to defend themselves. That's not the issue.
All right, so I'm wondering then, do you think that Trump will succeed, as you said, in trying to control the likes of Mattis, be it in Syria or even be it when it comes to Yemen, because there's news now that the Americans may arm the Saudis even more, because obviously they're not doing that well in Yemen.
That's right. That is the big question. Now, why Trump, anybody in his right mind, would appoint someone whose nickname is Mad Dog to be Secretary of Defense is anybody's guess. But, I mean, he's a totally unpredictable guy who doesn't have a lot of experience in doing this kind of stuff. So that's the big question. Is he on board with the deep state now, in which case he has betrayed all of the Americans who voted for him because they voted for peace and they didn't want war? Or is this just a strategic feint just to get the oligarchs off his back? That's the big question. I guess we'll have to wait and see how it develops.
All right, Mr. Jones, we'll leave it there at that. But of course, as always, we appreciate you putting that into context for us.